What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome on this lovely Friday. We have week 11 tomorrow. And I actually have a lot to talk about this Friday. A lot has happened. Trust me, nothing political is going to be said because we don't talk about that here. But there's a lot of football stuff that has actually happened this week that we have to talk about. So, you know what? We're just going to get right into it. Game picks will be the last thing I do. I have a few topics I want to get to before we get to that. So, first and foremost, I think we have to talk about the college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday night, ironically. And, I have it here in front of me on the college football playoff website. And overall, I don't have that many issues with it. There's a few things that don't really make sense to me. I don't know how you could say Penn State's better than Tennessee. I think Penn State is just so overrated. I don't think Penn State should be ahead of Indiana either. Um, I do have an issue with Ohio State being over Georgia. That doesn't make much sense to me either. I understand that you could say that, oh, Ohio State has the better loss, but that's also but what you can also say is that Ohio State has a much weaker schedule behind them and ahead of them, and UGA or Georgia by far has the better win. I understand that Texas is 5 and Penn State is 6. You cannot convince me that Texas would not beat the brakes off of Penn State. You can't convince me. Penn State is so overrated every single year, and I don't understand why. It's the same with Notre Dame. I really just don't get it. I don't understand it. But at the end of the day, all that matters is being in the playoff. Okay, that's really all that matters. Of course, being in the top four, getting the bye is nice, but at the end of the day, it's just about getting in the playoff. So I'm not gonna make too much of a fuss about the rankings. BYU being in that 12th spot, that makes sense to me. Um, SMU, I think, is a good football team, 100%. Alabama, LSU, that game is to see, okay, who's going to get that playoff spot. But honestly, I think whoever wins, well, let me rephrase that. And it's sad that this is the case. If Alabama wins, they're for sure going to be in the playoff. They won't even have to play in the SEC championship game. If LSU wins and they win out, there's still a chance they don't get in, which is sad and shouldn't be the case, but it is what it is. It's where we've come to. Um, Ole Miss can make a case if they beat Georgia tomorrow, which we'll get to that game pick. Um, Iowa State's going to have to win out. BYU just has to win out, and they'll be that 4 spot, which is why I said being in that 5 spot is really kind of where you want to be. If you're not going to be in the top four, 5 is where you want to be because you face the group of 5 team who you'll destroy, and then you face the weakest of um, the conference winners, which in this case would be BYU. I mean, that's exactly where you want to be. It's basically 2 free wins. I mean, let's be honest here. But there's not much to say about the rankings until we get kind of closer to the end of the season and we get to these conference championship games. Right now, this is kind of just a placeholder. But there's actually 2 other things that I really wanted to talk about before I get to the game picks because both of them really make me want to rant. We're going to get into, firstly, and ironically, each topic has to do with 2 teams that played each other last weekend, being Florida and Georgia. Let's go to Florida first. Let's start there. So, Florida has announced that Billy Napier will be returning next season. And ironically, literally minutes before I started this, we had breaking news that their basketball head coach, Todd Golden, has been accused of sexual harassment and stalking. Let me explain something. The University of Florida, when it comes to sports and athletics, is no longer a serious program. They are no longer a serious program. They are a a shell of their former selves, and they are a joke. How Billy Napier is getting another year is beyond me. He didn't go to a bowl game last year. He might not go to one this year. And it really feels like, how weird is it that he just got another year off of a loss? And it honestly just feels like they're giving him another year simply because he kept it close for a while against Georgia. And to me, that just doesn't feel like a good reason to bring someone back. Because if the standard now at Florida is, well, can we just keep it close with Georgia? Then you have really lost yourself as a program and specifically as a football team. It's a joke. And if you're keeping them just to keep DJ Lagway there, it's still stupid because you cannot let one player hold your program hostage. And I'm not saying that DJ is purposefully holding them hostage. He's not, I'm sure he's not going up to them and being like, if you fire Billy, then I'll leave. I'm sure he's not doing that. But that's how it comes off, that you're making this decision just so that you don't lose him. But here's the thing. If you fire Billy Napier and you hire Lane Kiffin, do we think DJ Lagway would leave? I don't think so. I think Lane is a very good recruiter. I think he could keep DJ Lagway there. And another thing, think of it this way. So let's compare. Billy Napier is the head coach next season. They bring in Lane Kiffin to be the head coach for next season. Who do you think would have the better record next season? If you think Billy Napier, I think you're on drugs. Because Lane Kiffin will make an immediate impact on this team due to how good he is in the portal. I'm not saying this team would make the playoff. I'm not saying they'd win, 10 games, but they would certainly go to a bowl game. They would at least win about 7 games. And here's another problem. Billy, you had a terrible year this year. You had a terrible year last year, a bad year this year. Well, maybe it'll get better next year. No, it won't. Because guess what? Your schedule is going to be really difficult next year as well. Your schedule is going to be very difficult next year as well. How can we expect him to do any better? Like, what do you really expect out of him? Are you going to give him, oh, good job, Billy, you did so well, if he gets 7 wins next year? 7? Is that what we're aiming for? 7 wins? Look, I said Florida announcing that they're keeping Billy Napier is them announcing that they are no longer a serious program, and that is the facts. And now you have your basketball coach who has terrible accusations against him. It seems to me like the University of Florida could use a new athletic director. That's what it seems to me. But what do I know, huh? What do I know? I'm just a guy making videos on YouTube, I guess. What do I know? But let's get to the next thing that makes me even angrier. So, as you should know, if you've been paying attention, people think that UGA, Georgia, Kirby Smart, has a bad culture. And part of the reason is that there was a case, Colby Young, a transfer wide receiver from Miami. He was arrested and had charges of, I think it was like assault or harming an unborn child, something like that, right? Because the woman was pregnant. And it was announced that he got arrested. And everyone immediately jumped to, oh, look at the Thug program. Kirby's no better than Urban Meyer when he was at Florida. Oh, look at this bad culture, a bunch of thugs. How could you ever root for this team? Kirby's lost control of the locker room. And then what happens? Because you see, if you actually paid attention to that case, you would have known that the details surrounding it were sketchy at best. And then it gets announced. When was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. It was announced that the charges against Colby Young had been dropped. And I made a tweet, or it's on X, so I don't know what you would call it. I'm just going to still say a tweet. I tweeted, "Oh man, the UGA has a bad culture, elitists gonna have to walk back everything they said after the Colby Young incident." That tweet currently has almost 3,000 views, over 80 likes, 12 retweets, which to someone who's like verified, or for someone who is used to getting a bunch of engagements on Twitter, that's not a lot. But for me, who doesn't really, I just kind of tweet out stuff. I'm not really looking for engagements. And so I don't usually get a ton. That's a ton for me. A ton. I mean, the most I usually get is like 100 views on a tweet. I got almost 3,000, and it's growing by the hour. I just really think it's so interesting that everyone, and look, I understand, and it's expected to a degree, that when you have a program that is so successful like Georgia is currently, that a lot of haters are going to come out the woodwork. I understand that, right? But what I don't understand, and what I cannot agree with, and what I cannot accept, is that at the end of the day, these players are young men. Some people would call them kids. I wouldn't. They're not under 18, but they're very young men who they come to these universities to play football, and their lives get highlighted because now you're at a big time university that a lot of people care about. And now you're also making a ton of money while doing so. And the media and fans want to rake these kids through the coals anytime they mess up, without even wanting to see their side, without even wanting to see if they are innocent or not. And everyone came out the woodwork when that arrest was announced. Because, of course, every arrest for UGA players is announced, but you don't hear a thing about any other program. And don't sit there and tell me that no other program has players get arrested. But you only hear about the UGA players, but I won't even get into that. I won't even get into that. I won't even get into the fact that Texas had a 5-star, I think he was a freshman or sophomore, mysteriously just not on the team anymore, and no one really wants to talk about much about that. Everyone just kind of just sweeps that under the rug. Like, okay, cool. If a Georgia player had just mysteriously been kicked off the team, everyone would immediately gone to, oh, I bet you he's a criminal. I bet you he did something illegal. But whatever. But where are those people? Where are those people yesterday? Where are those people today? Apologizing for jumping the gun, for saying what they said about this program, about that kid. Where are they? They're nowhere to be found. Shocker. Now they want to sweep it. Now they want to sweep it under the rug. I bet, because they look like a bunch of idiots. Although they looked like idiots in the first place, because you're really going to have to help me understand how a program who has won 2 out of the last 3 national championships has a bad culture. You're really going to have to explain that one to me. But whatever. Whatever. No one has to answer for being immature, for being irresponsible, for not holding themselves accountable. No one has to answer. It's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. I'm excited for the game against Ole Miss this weekend. I'm a little worried about Carson Beck, as everyone I think should be. Kirby's probably worried about him. I mean, but I believe in this team. I believe in this program. I believe in Kirby Smart. Right now, ESPN is projecting Ole Miss to win. You have Josh Pate with 24/7. What's he saying? He's saying he doesn't see how Ole Miss loses. Okay. I mean, I think everyone should have learned with the Texas game. What happens when you do this? What happens? You see a struggle game against Florida State, or sorry, against Florida, and then you get lulled into thinking, "Oh, this is the moment. This is the moment that Georgia's going to lose to someone not named Alabama." And then what's going to happen? But we'll get to that prediction in a second. Let's go to the game picks, eh? So we're going to start with Florida at Texas. Florida going with a third string quarterback with a coach who should be fired at Texas, who had a bye week. Yeah, I feel like Texas is going to blow them out. Anyone else think that? I think if you don't think that, you're a moron. Yes, I'm a little hostile today, if you can't tell. Because I just can't stand stupid people. I can't stand stupid programs. But you know what? We're past that. We're past that, Grayson. We're past it. But I think Texas is going to destroy Florida this weekend, unfortunately for them. But they deserve it. They deserve every bit of this beating that they're about to take. Miami versus Georgia Tech. Oof. This game is infamous now because of what happened last season with Mario Cristobal refusing to have a brain and deciding to not kneel the ball instead of running it. Then they fumbled, and Georgia Tech won the game. But I'm going to go Miami. I think they're really going to. I think they have this game circled. I think they're really going to want to put a beating on Georgia Tech for what happened last season. We'll save Georgia Ole Miss for last. Michigan, Indiana. This one's a little interesting. You keep expecting, like, okay, when's the Indiana slip up coming? When's the Indiana slip up coming? It hasn't come yet. They've continued to dominate. And I'm going to go Indiana once again because Michigan is a bunch of dirty cheaters and they don't deserve any success. I am hostile today. Goodness. Colorado, Texas Tech. This is an interesting one. This one's hard for me to predict. Texas Tech has been kind of surprisingly good this season. They've been solid. They're not a team you should take lightly. And with it being in Lubbock, I think Deion Sanders and this Colorado team need to take this game very seriously and be very careful. And you know what? It gives me pause because I think this is such an upset spot, and I could totally see Texas Tech winning. But Colorado, I think, was on a bye last week, if I'm not mistaken, which makes me pause. But you know what? Let's go with the upset. Let's go with the Red Raiders. Let's go with Texas Tech. South Carolina versus Vanderbilt. Oh, man. Isn't this a good one? Isn't this just a doozy of a game? I think I'm going to go South Carolina. Look, Vanderbilt is America's team, but I think South Carolina has been surprisingly good this season. Lenora Sellers has been surprisingly good this season. And right now, I just believe more in South Carolina and what they've shown than I do in Vanderbilt. Although I will say this is the typical spot. South Carolina, an emotional win at night, and now they have to go to Vanderbilt, who is a feisty team, America's team, as I call them. This could absolutely be a South Carolina letdown spot, but I'm going to pick them to win. A Beamer ball. Oklahoma at Missouri. This is just a tale of two disappointing programs this season. But I'm going to go Missouri. I think they're just overall the better team. Simply put, Oklahoma doesn't have Luther Burden. Washington versus Penn State. I could see this being an upset and Penn State losing, but it's like I've said 1,000 times with James Franklin and Penn State. They can't win the big one, but they win games like this. And so give me Penn State. BYU at Utah. I think BYU needs to be careful with this game being at Utah, but I'm going to give BYU the win. They've been impressive this season. I think their undefeated streak will keep going. And if Utah had Cam Rising, I would think a little bit differently about this game. But at the end of the day, they don't. So give me BYU. Utah's been very disappointing. BYU's been very surprising. Now let's get to the two big ones. We'll start with Alabama LSU. So here's my thing. It depends on which version of these two teams we see. If we see first half against Texas A&M LSU, I think LSU wins handedly. If we see second half, then I think Alabama wins. But the same could be said for Alabama. If we see first half against Georgia Alabama, I think Alabama wins handedly. If we see any other time Alabama, then they could be in trouble. At the end of the day, to me, this comes down to where the game is. It's at night in Death Valley. And that, to me, gives LSU the edge. And I'm going to pick LSU to win and knock Alabama out of the playoff chase and kill their season. Go Tigers. And last but not least, oh boy, Georgia at Ole Miss. Before the season started, I don't remember if I said this on any of my preseason um, episodes, but before the season, if you would have asked me, okay, Grayson, out of those three tough away games, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, which one are you the most worried about? I would have told you Ole Miss. I would have. Because I think that Ole Miss really, first of all, they remember last season when we beat the brakes off of them. And I also worried that if we had beat Alabama and beat Texas, that we would come into the Ole Miss game too confident and lose and slip up. Now, obviously, we didn't beat Alabama, so we're coming in with one loss. But I do like our chances in this game because similar to James Franklin and Penn State, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss can't win a big game either. And look, I think the Grove will be electric, but UGA, Georgia, they are battle tested with road games. They went to Tuscaloosa and should have won. They went to Austin, Texas and did win. They had an away game against Kentucky, which was a rough game. So I'm going to go Georgia here, and I think Georgia will handle Ole Miss. I think I could see Georgia winning by around 17 points, around 17 to 21. That's truly what I believe because look at what you've seen in the past this season with Georgia. We struggled against Mississippi State. What happened the following week? We beat the brakes off of Texas. Now what are you seeing again? Off a bye, we struggled against Florida. Well, what does the trend say? The trend says we're now going to beat the brakes off of Ole Miss. And so that's my prediction. We'll see how the game goes. I feel like this week has flown by with the election and all this stuff going on in the world. And this game has just kind of snuck up on us. And now here we are. The game is literally tomorrow at 3:30, but I'm excited. I'm excited for the game. I'm excited to see how Carson plays. I need to see better decision making. He has to stop forcing it. As I talked about it on Tuesday, he has to stop forcing it. He has to stop playing hero ball. Live to play another down. Just don't make stupid mistakes, okay? Look, if you throw the ball and it hits one of the guys in the hands, tips up and it's intercepted, I can live with that. It's not your fault, okay? If a receiver runs the wrong route, I can live with that. It's not your fault. But the 2 interceptions he had against Florida, the 2 main ones I'm talking about, the first 2 that happened, those were on him 100%. He's forced it and tried to play hero ball. He has to stop. Because if you turn the ball over 3 times against Ole Miss, we will not survive. We will not survive unless Ole Miss turns the ball over a ton as well. But I don't think we should try to rely on that. But those are my thoughts. Those are my game picks. I hope that everyone has a great weekend, watches college football, enjoys what they see. I hope your team wins, whoever your team is, unless you're an Ole Miss fan. I hope you have a terrible day tomorrow. Um, yeah, those are my picks. Everyone, have a tremendous day.